All right, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about value selling and solution selling. Those are two terms that you probably have heard in the past, but I'm going to break them down a little bit more precisely today. So value selling, if you are not familiar with that term, what that means is as a seller, you are working with a customer and you are trying to make sure that you identify how your product, service, or organization can provide, and I hate to use the word, but value to them in the long term. Normally we see value selling in relationships that are long lasting with customers, but that's not necessarily always the case. And then solution selling is where you as the seller work with your customer and you try to identify pain points, and then you position your service or your product as the way to ameliorate those pain points and those symptoms going further. And again, we often sometimes see solution selling with a shorter deal cycle. That's not always the case though. And they can actually be interwoven, and I'll talk about that. Both value selling and both solution selling really require a consultative-like mindset. So what is a consultative-like mindset? That's where you as a seller are going in and as an expert, you're really trying to bring your industry knowledge, you're trying to ask thoughtful and critical questions, you're having open communication, you're having empathy for the customer to really figure out what are the symptoms, what are the pain points, and what are possible situations that might be presented in the future that you can get ahead of. Now, to really understand when solution and value selling comes into play, we're going to go through some storytelling, because selling is all about storytelling. When I was at the National War College, someone explained tactics, operations, and strategy to me this way, and it has stuck. So I'll cover it with you. Think about a car, right? NASCAR, Formula One. I'm sure you watch Netflix, right? And you've seen the series. So what you're imagining is you're imagining the race car driver, and that's the tactics. That is the individual who in the moment is deciding how to make that car go, how fast, how to take the turns, how to deposition the competition, right? They are in the moment making things happen. And then you have the pit crew, and the pit crew is the operations, and they're deciding how to take off the tires. They're making sure that the engine is working before that car has to go back out on the racetrack. They're doing that as quickly and as fast as possible. They're figuring out how many people they need in that pit crew in that exact moment, right? That's the operations. And then you have the owner of the car, and that's the strategy. The owner of the car is deciding how many races do they enter into? What's the budget? Who are the right people? What does that look like? What is the competition doing, right? How are they getting the advantage? How are they maybe losing advantage? So thinking big and broadly, right? Now, if you're talking to the race car driver, that individual might be very focused on solution selling. They want to know how your product or service might help them in that moment take the turns, right? And maybe the operations crew might also be worried about solution selling. But when you move to the owner of the car, so we'll say like an executive engagement, that individual, maybe like a C-suite, like the owner of the car, they're going to be really focused on value selling. How is this going to help them long-term improve the strategy of their organization? Because they know that they have a pit crew, that they have a driver, right, that can execute on the product. So they're not going to be as involved in the individual details of the solution. They're going to be much more focused on the value overall. So when you as a seller are thinking about solution selling versus value selling, it's really important to understand when you're dealing with your stakeholders, where do they fall on that tactics, operational, and strategic thinking? Are they more the driver? Are they more the pit crew? Or are they more the owner of the car? Because if they are more the pit crew and the owner of the car, then you know the right type of approach might be value selling, right? You don't want to distract them with details that the driver needs to be worried about. And you don't want to distract the driver in the solution with value selling that the owner of the car is going to be worried about. Now, I'm sure you have dealt with organizations and you realize that oftentimes you might start with the driver and that person becomes the champion or the ambassador, and then you get introduced to the pit crew, and then you get introduced to the owner. And throughout that journey, you are pivoting from solution to value selling. So it's really interwoven, and they don't necessarily have to be unique to each other. I hope that helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.